Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for coming. If you guys haven't met me yet, I'm Michaela Morris. I'm the VP of Programming for AMA Phoenix. And welcome to our webinar today on the future of search, how AI is rewriting the rules. I'll hop into the agenda for today. So we're going to start off with the webinar itself, our content, then we'll hop into some Q&A with our speaker, Kyle. And then stick around for our last few slides. We'll talk about what's coming up next with AMA Phoenix. So to kick us off, I want to introduce our speaker today. Today we have with us Kyle Kilpatrick. He is the Vice President of Enterprise Healthcare at Yext. Kyle's a great partner with us at Banner Health and super excited for him to lead our webinar today. So Kyle, I'll kick it off to you.
All right, thanks, Michaela. I want to start by, maybe doing something a little different, and I want you to think about, the last time you searched for something important, right? A restaurant, a doctor, a product you weren't sure about, and think about how you did it, right? A year ago, most of us would have opened Google, typed a few words, and we would have clicked through to a couple websites, right? So here's what's changing. A growing number of people in that same moment are now typing a question into ChatGPT or asking Gemini or letting Google's AI summarize the answer right before they ever see a single link. And here's the part that should get your attention as a marketer. In a lot of those cases, the user gets their answer without ever clicking anything, without ever visiting your website, without ever seeing, your brand unless AI decided to cite you. And that's what this session is going to be about, right? It's not a prediction. I'm not here to do that. I'm not that smart, and I don't want to, pretend that, that's something that I'm doing here. So it's just it's not a trend to watch either, right? It's something that's already happening right now, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room have felt that, right? So we're going to cover, what changed, what that means for your work, and what you can do about it starting this week, right? So, as it was announced in the beginning, right? My name is Kyle Kilpatrick, and I'm with Yext. And we work with brands on exactly this problem, but today, it's not going to be a sales pitch, I promise. And Yext does a really good job of having a research arm and really trying to line this up so that we can be thought leaders in this space. And this is just me sharing what we're seeing across the industry, because I think every marketer needs to understand, the shift regardless of what tools you use. So let's make sure we're, all kind of starting from the same place here, right? For the last 20 years, search worked the same basic way. A person had a question, they typed a few keywords, Google returned a list of 10 blue links. And if you were lucky enough to rank near the top, you got the click, right? That's the world. The entire content marketing industry was built around. That's how Yext started. Keywords, rankings, clicks, traffic, very clean loop, right? Now, if you look at the right side of this slide, the AI world, the question is the same, the need is the same, but the experience is completely different where, the person types or now speaks a natural language question. Sometimes they ask follow-up questions like a conversation, and the AI synthesizes an answer and it reads across dozens of sources, reconciles with what they say, and delivers a direct response. The user doesn't get a list, they get an answer, and in many cases, they never click on anything, right? So here's the line I want you to hold on to, from the whole session, right? And then I think what is important, what we've talked about internally here too, is visibility used to mean position on a page, and now it means being the source that AI trusts. Those are not the same thing, and the gap between them is where a lot of marketing budgets are quietly linking right now. And if kind of take, if you don't take anything else, from this today, remember this, right? The game changed and is changing, it's already changed. So, you might be thinking, is this just SEO with a new name? Because I know in marketing, there's a lot of acronyms and people love the buzzwords, and it seems like every week there is a new one. But let me explain maybe why this, maybe isn't just a SEO with a new name, right? So the traditional SEO, the kind that most of us have been doing for years, is optimizing content to rank well on Google's algorithm. You target keywords, you build backlinks, you make sure your site loads fast. And the goal is, position 1 through 10 on the results page. It's been pretty simple, and it's been the same for quite a while now, right? So, generative engine optimization is something different. And it's the practice of making your brand discoverable and favorably cited by AI-powered systems. Notice the word, right? Cited, not ranked, cited. So in SEO, your own website is your primary asset. In geo, your entire information ecosystem is the battleground. Your website, your Google business profile, your Yelp listing, and other pages that you have, your press mentions, your review profiles, your help content, everything AI can read about you is in play now. So here's why I think that matters urgently and why I'm not just saying this for effect, right? McKinsey published a major report, I think it was into late 2025, and their findings, geo is a core marketing capability that, brands need to invest in now. They project, and I know, again, no, all about projections, but, they're projecting that by 2028, there's going to be about, 750 billion in consumer spend that will flow through AI influenced search, right? And brands that fail to adapt, could see 20 to 50% of their traffic, fall off, from traditional search. So, for the people in the room who are just, maybe hearing this for the first time, that's obviously not a small number, and that's not like a niche shift. That's a structural change to where customers find you, and the window to get ahead of it is right now. Next slide. Here's like, probably the more clarifying data point that I've seen on this topic, at least over the last few months. And, encourage you to, obviously you can get this deck, and I know this is recorded, but, this would be a pretty important slide to kind of take away from this. Yext in 2025, we analyzed close to 7 million AI citations across ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity. And the finding was this, that, 86% of the citations there and the AI generated responses come from sources that, brands already control. And what that really means is that's your website, that's your listings on, third-party directories, that's your help content, and that's your local pages. It's not Reddit, it's not random forums, it's you. You control generally most, if not all, of the stuff that AI is going to pick up here, right? So that's the good news. The bad news, I would say, is this, stuff we've seen is that most brands aren't treating those sources with the care they deserve. The data is inconsistent, outdated, or not structured in a way AI can read. And here's the principle that, ties all this together. And this is something that I think every time I talk to a brand about AI search. AI models assign a confidence based upon, corroboration. You think of it like a jury, right? Where if 26 sources all say your business is open Monday through Saturday, the AI is confident. If some say Saturday, some say Sunday, some don't mention it, the AI loses confidence and either skips you or hedges the answer, right? So the word for 2026 in AI search is corroboration. How many places say the same thing about you, how consistently, and that is your most important signal right now. So that, this is why, a brand with a beautiful website, but messy, inconsistent data across the internet can get completely bypassed. Maybe while a scrappier competitor with clean, consistent information everywhere gets cited as the authority. So structure and consistency are, the new SEO. Okay. Now let's talk about, what this does to your dashboard for all the marketers that have to report on their numbers. Because this is where it gets, maybe slightly uncomfortable for a lot of marketing teams. If you look at these numbers, 60% of all searches now in without a single click. 93% of Google's AI, mode sessions where users interact with Google's AI directly end without a website visit. So when Google AI overview appears in the results, the zero click rate hits 83%. So I want you to sit with that for a second, because I think the instinct is to, maybe panic or, try to figure out what's next. And if no one's clicking, what does that mean for us, right? And here's how I'd reframe it. Zero click does not mean, zero impact for your brand or, important metrics to report up. I think when ChatGPT tells someone your brand is a trusted option in your category with accurate information, a good review profile, and clear availability, that's brand building. And, that is trust being built. Conversation may come later as a direct visit, a phone call, word of mouth referral, but your analytics just won't capture it, right? And that, I think that is what practitioners now are calling the dark funnel. And AI influenced purchases often show up as direct traffic or no attribution at all, and your marketing is working. It's just your dashboard doesn't know it. So when you think about what that means, maybe is organic traffic declining. Like that could actually be happening even when your visibility in AI is improving. And I think we've seen that a lot, right? Where maybe organic traffic is dropping, but appointments or consumers booking or transactions just in general are either flat or growing. So those two things are maybe now going to be decoupled as we go forward, right? And, as your click-through rate dropping, right? And that may mean just AI is using your content to answer questions, which is a win, not a failure. So, brand awareness through citation, that's another one, right? Where that's real, measurable, and grown as a category. So, maybe I think just collectively as a marketing community, probably just need to build new ways of measuring it, right? So the scoreboard changed and we'll go into, maybe how to update that in a few slides. Next slide. All right. So now we'll kind of get into mechanics here. So if AI is reading your content, deciding whether or not to cite you, what makes it say yes, right? So there's six things that I wanted to present today, right? And I promise none of these require a total rebuild. They just require intention, which I think is, again, a positive side of this. One, and I think this is for anybody that's talked to me, I think this is kind of a broken robot kind of point that I say all the time, and I do think it's the most important thing, and it's structured data. I think this schema markup and clean information architecture. I think of it as giving AI a clear table of contents for your content, right? So unstructured data or a wall of marketing copy, is very hard for AI to extract facts from, right? So structured data is easy. And if you're not on this yet, like I think this is your single highest like leverage technical task that you can take from here. Number two for the direct Q&A format, right? So AI pulls from content that directly answers questions. If your page is titled "Everything You Need to Know About Home Insurance," that's maybe less useful to an AI than a page titled "What does home insurance cover?" with a clean, direct answer in the first paragraph, right? So you write for the question, not the category. I think three there, authoritative sourcing and what that really means, right, is named authors, credentials, dates, citations. AI models evaluate credibility. So according to our team, maybe doesn't carry the same weight as according to Dr. Jane Smith, published in January 2026, right? So add attribution wherever it's honest and relevant. For number four here, so cross-channel consistency, I think this is the corroboration principle in practice, right? Where if your hours on Google Business Profile don't match your website, which don't match your Yelp listing, you have a trust problem with AI before you've written a single word of new content. So fix the data first. For five, from a freshness standpoint, AI tracks recency signals. A page that has been touched since 2022 sends a low confidence signal. So you don't need to rewrite it. You just need to refresh it. Update the data, add a current data point, market reviewed, 20 minutes of work per page on a quarterly calendar. Maybe it would be like a good timing, or good kind of like focus area of that. And lastly, there from a third party presence, right? Your website is only part of the picture. So, reviews, trade press, analyst mentions, blogs, anything like that. Like these third party signals are active inputs into how AI understands your brand authority. You can't fully control them, but you can help influence them. And I think a Princeton study that I saw, right, found that applying these techniques in combination can improve AI visibility up to 30 to 40%. So it's all about stacking them, and the compounding effect will be real. Okay, so now let's name the failure, model specifically, right? So because I think this is the most useful part of any conversation about AI search. It's not the theory, but the specific things that are maybe quietly costing brands right now. You can see parallels between, the last side and this. So inconsistent business data is a high risk one, right? So this is the silent killer. If your address, hour, services, phone number differ across platforms, then AI encounters a contradiction. It doesn't guess which is right. It flags your brand as unreliable and moves on. So this is happening at scale. Most brands have never done a systematic audit of their data consistency across even 5 platforms. I think when we move over to the other side too, for unstructured content, that's another high risk, category here. So a lot of the content that ranked well in 2019 is actively bad for AI consumption. It was written to impress a keyword algorithm. So there's no clear questions or answers, no extractable facts. LLMs struggle with it. There's a reason, and we'll make this joke at Yext quite a bit, but there's a reason why MapQuest and some of those other long tail sites have a renaissance now, because they have easy data to read. And these AI models like to read that stuff. So, You go over to the, more of the medium risk area, you go into the thin digital footprint, and what that will mean is, a brand that has a great website, but almost no presence anywhere else, no directories, no third-party mentions, no review profile, has almost no corroborating evidence. So AI sees one source and doesn't know whether to trust it. Um, for outdated content there, right? A page with, 2022 data is a freshness flag. 73%, I think, of business to business websites lost significant traffic between 2024 and 2025. And that's, because stale content is a major contributing factor. So the fix is, genuinely simple. It's, just refresh your highest traffic pages on a schedule. The no answer layer content, I see this a lot with sophisticated brands. The blog is full of thought leadership, long essays, opinion pieces, POV content. A lot of work goes into that, and a lot of good work. And it's really valuable for humans, but AI mostly doesn't cite it, right? So AI cites pages that directly answer practical questions, and realistically, you need both. For ignoring the AI overviews, Google AI overviews now appear on 25% of all searches, and that's only going to go up. I think they're forcing that AI search component on everybody, regardless if you click down into it. And that's up from 13% at the start of 2025, right? So if you're optimizing purely for blue lake rankings, you're leaving a quarter of all query impressions on the table. And I think the common thread in all six, these are all neglected problems, but not hard problems. So I'd say most of them can be addressed without a big budget. They just require someone to own them. Okay. So one of the most frustrating things I'd say probably that I've heard happen in marketing right now is that teams are being penalized for metrics that no longer tell the story. You can be winning an AI search, more citations, better accuracy, growing share of voice, um, while your organic traffic dashboard trends down, right? So if your leadership is still measuring you on the old metrics, that looks like a problem when it might actually be progress. So let's work together here and try to update the scoreboard, shall we? So for organic traffic, yes, let's track it, right? But understand that it can decline even as you gain AI visibility. They're decoupled now. So a new metric could be AI citation frequency. So how often does your brand appear when AI answers questions in your category? Keyword ranking is still useful, but position one on a query with an AI overview means very different traffic than it used to. New metric, right, could be AI visibility score. Like, are you being cited across ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Perplexity when someone asks a question? Click-through rate, CTR dropping on pages where AI is summarizing your content is not a failure. It might mean you've become the authoritative source, right? So a new metric for this could be brand impressions and AI generated answers, right? How often is your brand part of the answer, regardless of click outcome? Backlinks for SEO, the links still matter, but the AI confidence model works maybe slightly differently. The new metric could be cross-platform, data consistency score, and third-party mention velocity. And that's just a lot of buzzwords, so I get it. But it's essentially how clean and consistent is your data and how actively is your brand being referenced externally. There's tools, you name it, like a SEMrush, a Yext Scout products are built specifically for, AI visibility benchmarking. But even a manual audit running your key category questions through ChatGPT and Perplexity about documenting what comes back is a meaningful starting point, right? So one more thing I'd say probably on this is that only 10% of users trust the first AI result without verifying it elsewhere, right? So 48% cross-check across multiple platforms, and they'll go through different AI models or they'll go to Google. So accuracy isn't just a nice to have, it's your competitive moat. Okay. As we think about takeaways from day two, this is probably a pretty important one too, to try to, take this into your practice and into your own, your own business. So I'm not going to give you a 50-step transformation roadmap. I'm going to give you 8 things, right? So 4 for the next 30 days, 4 for the next 90. And I promise every single one is actionable without a massive budget or, technology overhaul. So in the next 30 days, I'd say first, run an AI visibility audit. This is free. It takes an hour and it'll tell you more than almost anything else, right? Open ChatGPT, open Gemini, open Perplexity, you take your pick. And type the questions your customers actually ask, right? Does your brand show up? Is the information accurate? Write down what you find. That's your baseline. Challenge the answers a little bit. Ask the models how they came up with those answers, where they're pulling information from. You can start to figure out your data strategy through that. Third, or second, I would say like audit your top 5 pages for answer readiness, right? The for each page, does the headline mirror a question your customer is asking? Is there a direct answer in the first 100 words? If not, you don't need to rewrite the whole page. You need to restructure the top of it. Third, it'd probably run a data consistency check. Google Business Profile, Bing Places, Apple Maps, Yelp, your website. Are the hours, address, phone number, and services consistent across all five? Fix every discrepancy you find. This is probably the most or the fastest high impact fix on this list. I'd say fourth, add a FAQ schema markup to your top traffic pages. If you have a developer, this is a 2-hour task. If you don't, there are no code tools that can do it. This makes your content dramatically more extractable for AI. I think if we think like big picture over the next 90 days, I'd probably build or audit your knowledge graph, which is essentially a single source of truth for all your brand facts. When you update it once, it should propagate everywhere, right, to all these different directories. I think the other thing would probably be to create a content freshness calendar. So pick your 10 most important pages, put a quarterly review date in someone's calendar. When that date hits, update a data point, refresh the date, add a current statistic, and go on your way. Say the other way would be expand your third party presence, respond to reviews, pitch for trade press coverage or anything in that regard. Check into those kind of blogs and forums and just be really good about getting those third party signals because they're going to compound over time. The next piece of that would be, set up AI citation traffic or tracking as a standing monthly KPI. Even if it's just a spreadsheet where someone runs the queries manually each month, like establish the habit now before everyone else does. And I'd say, none of these require a budget approval. They just require ownership. So put someone's name on each one by the end of the week and see what you can go do. Okay, next slide. Okay. So for some of you, the challenge isn't knowing what to do, right? I could have just been telling you things you already know. I think it's convincing the person above you or other people in parallel with you in leadership, right, to prioritize it. So let me, give you 4 frames to maybe, four ways to make this case, depending upon what your organization responds to. I think one way to do it right would be frame it as a risk. I think this is one that opens the budget the fastest in my experience is that McKinsey projects that brands that don't adapt could lose 20 to 50% of traffic from traditional search. I mentioned the 750 billion in consumer spend will flow through AI search by the end of 2028, and that is not a content team problem. That is a board level revenue projection conversation. So walk in with that number. I think another crafty way to do it is frame it as efficiency. 86% of AI citations come from sources you already own. So you're not starting from zero. You're getting credit for the content you've already built, or you should be at least. And this is about making your existing investment work harder, not about spending more. Another way to do it is frame it as a competitive advantage. Most organizations are not moving fast enough. In fact, like there's 56% aren't even increasing their SEO investment, let alone pivoting to, geo. So early movers capture outside visibility right now. And while competitors are still holding meetings about whether AI search is real, that's a window and it won't stay open. And I think last here would be, frame it as a data strategy. This one works especially well with technical or operations oriented leaders. The underlining principle is simple. Your AI strategy is your data strategy. Structured, consistent, distributed data pays off in AI search, in traditional search, and in direct customers experience. That's a broad, infrastructure argument with ROI across multiple channels. Pick the frame that, fits your organization's culture. And the message underneath is the same in all 4 cases, right? This is urgent and the cost of waiting is rising. Zooming back out for a minute, I'll give you a sense of maybe where this is headed, just so you're not building for today's problems and you're really marching towards, where at least, we think things are going based upon signals and paying attention to the market, right? So in the next, maybe, 6 to 12 months, AI overviews will become the default of Google for most intent-driven queries. If you're not optimizing for the answer layer, right, you're effectively invisible on a growing percentage of searches, and geo goes from a competitive advantage to table stakes. I think agentic search becomes real at scale. AI agents don't just answer questions, they take actions, booking appointments, comparing options, routing customers, completing purchases. Google just announced this direction at I/O 2026, I think 2, 3 weeks ago. And search is moving towards agents that work in the background on your behalf. For brands, this means the website becomes less of a destination and more of an API. So your data needs to be machine readable, not just human readable. I made the comment earlier, but it needs to be both. Also in that window, I'd say, memory personalized AI results becomes mainstream. ChatGPT and Gemini are already building persistent user profiles. When an AI remembers that someone prefers a certain brand, a certain location, a certain price point, it shapes every future answer. And brands that earn trust early in that memory profile will get a structural advantage that's very hard for latecomers to replicate. We're seeing this very much in every industry that we're involved in, and on our side, and it's going to just be fascinating where the chats that folks have with their different language models are starting to build that patient loyalty or the customer loyalty to the different brands they are just based upon, was that recommendation right for them and did they seem to enjoy it? And maybe these models even start asking for feedback of, was my recommendation good for you? And really starting to validate that. I think later on, right, I think there's a, when the share of the answer in AI results becomes the primary brand visibility metric too, right? It's not a share of voice in media. It's not click rankings. It's literally when someone asks a question in your category and how often are you part of the answer? That becomes the new prime real estate. So, the brands that, are writing the playbook now for that era are doing the groundwork now. And that can be you. And again, I think it's really imperative that people start getting into this now because as more and more people are using these models and it's growing pretty frequently, that memory is going to train, and those are going to be the suggested brands of the future. We have covered a lot of ground, so let me try to land this simply, and then we can open it up for the questions. Right, so search isn't dead. I want to be clear about that. Right, traditional search still matters. Billions of people use Google every day, and this is not an either or. But the architecture of how search delivers answers has changed and the rules for visibility have changed with it, right? So AI is now the first reader of everything you publish, optimized for the machine that answers your customers' questions. And I think that's just, kind of the flat answer to that. I think you already own the data, right? So 86% of your citations already come from sources you already control. So the question isn't, whether you can compete in AI search, it's whether your data is accurate, consistent, and structured enough to be used, right? So for most brands, that gap is close, more faster than you think kind of to you, right? The metric has shifted. I talked a little bit about that too, right? So the question isn't no longer where do we rank, it's do AI systems trust us enough to cite us? So build for accuracy, consistency, and authority across every surface that your brand will be a part of. And act now, not later. The window's open, so early geo investments yield outsized gains while competitors are still debating whether or not this shift is real. The brands building structured data infrastructures today will be the ones AI answers in 2027. And I'll close with a line that I think is the clearest way to, say everything we've covered today. Your AI strategy is just your data strategy. So what data you have, how accurate it is, how consistent it is across every surface, how well structured it is for machines to read. That's the work. It's not glamorous, but it's the work that wins. And that is it. Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions. I know I saw some popping through, but that's the
Yes, we
spiel.
definitely have some questions that came through. One question that came in, or actually quite a few, is how do you run an AI visibility audit? And is anyone running their own audit? And are there specific tools that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean there's a ton of tools that are doing this now. It's obviously an exciting space for a lot of people to start companies and get in. I think you can do it a couple different ways. There's a lot of different companies that can do it, and you can search, and there's probably 20 different ones that have started up. I think what you can also do from an audit standpoint is you can also do it if you're a small company. You can do it grassroots, and you can go into ChatGPT, Gemini, any of those different models yourself and start poking around. I would be candid with you all too. Like I do that myself for Yext, where I ask, I try to figure out where Yext lands in the different models and how we fit in different categories. And then, you can go into Google Labs and use your personal Gmail account and any new advancements that Google has, you can play around with it. And with the new Google search, you can, go through and start questioning and asking why did it recommend this person? What sources does it pull from? What's important? So they're very open, those models are to really challenge it and try to figure out what it pulls from and how you can maybe dictate maybe some content strategy or where information is being pulled from those models.
And then for smaller organizations, like how can they remain visible if AI systems concentrate their attention on a limited set of resources?
I don't think that they focus on a limited set of resources. I think they're looking for consistency everywhere and freshness, right? So I still think there's a lot of, there's a funny thing that we'll show right from our side where MapQuest, Chamber of Commerce, and other different sources like that really matter, for AI models because it's easy to read the content. So I think regardless of the size of your brand as AI goes, as long as you have trustworthy data and consistent data across all the different, areas that your name would pop up, right, or the different categories, I think you have just as strong of a fight versus the big brand. So I really wouldn't worry about small versus big organizations as you go through here, go through there. You might even have a structural advantage, right? Where if a group has 10,000 locations, it's really tough to coordinate and have a consistent presence across all those. If you maybe have a couple locations, you can really put a lot of oomph into it and make sure that there's just consistency everywhere.
And then when you were saying like AI citation tracking, are you meaning the tracking of which of your pages AI tools are actually looking at and see if there's new pages popping up?
Totally. So when AI gives answers to a consumer question or when you're poking around and asking, you can see the sources that it pulled the information from. You can see the 10 different sources, the 5 different sources, and figure that out. So if it's pulling information about your brand from a site that you've never heard of, I would, probably get involved in looking at that. And if you can, help dictate the content that goes there, or then you can start asking different models as to why they pulled from there and not your website or not other areas where you do have focus, right? And it'll tell you.
Thank you for that. And so, like, as we're starting to embrace, this new way of our search, what should we focus on first? Should we really just do an audit of the website and see what can be done on the website? Is it content creation? Is it just structuring our data in a different way? Like, where did your team start, and where exactly would you recommend other teams to start?
I would say our team is pretty principled in this, that structuring data before you go out there is the most important thing. And then start looking at some of the low hanging fruit, right? From the, how, or do you have a, effective listing set up if you are like a, standalone business, right? Or, you have physical locations. Like, do you have all your profiles claimed, in all the different major directories, and are you managing those? And are you, making sure that there's consistency across those? I think that'd probably be like the first thing that I would do. And then I think from, your website, and as you look at that, the models will look at easy to read information on your website, right? So make it easy for those machines to read your website and crawl for those answers for basic questions, right? Or, when are you open? What insurances do you accept? What kind of credit cards do you take? If you're a restaurant, are you gluten free? Do you have those different things? Because I think Google and those different models are really looking for easy to read information, but straightforward answers, right? And avoid the, we're the best in the city pizza kind of thing, right? Like if you are the best in the city and you have awards, then put those awards on there. Because I think those models in Google and everything are looking for excellence, both from, whether or not you're a doctor and you have a high clinical award, or whether or not you're a restaurant and you won, James Beard, or you won like a local contest. Like put that on your pages as well, because I think the models are definitely going to lean towards third party validation versus you saying that your pizza is the best in town.
Thank you. Okay, another question has to do with, okay, how do we talk to our leadership? Because a lot of times they're looking at the click-throughs, they're seeing the website traffic declining. How would you recommend explaining that instead of, maybe getting frustrated about the declining traffic, that we should be measuring new metrics instead?
Yeah, that's something like that I think a lot of people are running through right now because it's going to be tough to break out of the mindset that everybody's been in for the last 15 years, with traditional metrics of looking at that. And like I said in the top of this slide too, right? Like it's not that search is dead and traditional search is still going to be there. But I would say with the vast majority of our clients and what I've seen is that search has taken a dip, right? And the metrics have taken a dip, but the transactional volume has stayed the same or risen. So I would say like it's important as you talk to leadership and you look at things, right? The most important thing for any business is to make sure that the transactional data, again, whether or not it's new patients, new customers, is that it's, maintaining a flat or growth, period from there. And then I think is, these AI models, the tough part of them about them too, just candidly is, they don't really share some of the metrics, with you. I'm sure they will once they open up ads, because then they're going to need to really kind of sell the value of open up ads for them. So I think it's just, taking the blocking and tackling and some of those steps that, I listed out, right, where it's, there's a big shift right now, and it's really important that, maybe you give them, the ability to type in, those different AI models, and you start working on questions, right? Where if you're looking for, a pizza spot near me, or you're looking for, the best, financial advisor, what do those models spit out? And, are we represented in that list? So I think it's just kind of getting your hands dirty maybe with some of those leaders and just saying like, hey, there's 40 million people that are using ChatGPT right now and asking questions, and where do we stand out? So I think it's kind of taken them along. I wish I had a better answer for you other than that, but I don't want to give you false hope that there's like some silver bullet for it, because I think a lot of people are trying to figure that out right now.
And you had mentioned like a moment the type of medias that perform well. They're looking for graphs. What types of media should we be focusing on? Should it be video? Should it be photos? Should it be graphs? Or should it just be written content or a combination?
Yeah, I think everything, right? And I think even in the traditional search market, or where maybe Google is kind of going to, is Google really likes Google Post. So if no one's done that, Google is seemingly trying to lean in a little more and have more posts and more activity go to their profiles as well. Um, so, I would say do everything, put as, much content as you can out there, and really try to, prepare it for, both humans and machines to read it. And I think there's, little things that you can do from a tactical standpoint to have machines read it. And again, it goes back into being really simple. I made that comment about MapQuest a few different times, but there's a reason why all those AI models pull that in all the time, because it's an easy to read website for clear answers, and it doesn't have a lot of fluff. Those AI models are trying to run a profit as well, and it's tough for their models to go extract information from a complicated website. So they generally will default to whatever's easiest. So I would say just as much content as you can put out, make it fresh, run a calendar, and just try to make it as simple as possible. And you could even have little local landing pages maybe for each thing, especially if you're running a charitable foundation, a part of your brand, or you're running, a special or something like that. You might even be able to put, a little effort into creating additional local landing pages to try to build that presence out too.
And I feel, and I agree with this, and whomever posted this, has been hearing it too, that a lot of peers have been mentioning Reddit and having a Reddit presence being valuable. Would that be one of those pages and profiles you would recommend people get actively on?
Yeah, I mean, like the data goes a couple different ways on that, where in the grand scheme of things, I think it's around 2% of what AI will cite for Reddit. There is a lot of noise on there for brands at a brand level. And I think it's important to pay attention to that. But I think in the grand scheme of things, what AI is pulling in about your location or your brand, it's pretty small when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. So again, 86%, of everything that AI is pulling in are things that you manage. And that Reddit component comes in depending upon what industry you're in, um, around 2% or maybe less, right? So not going to say it's not important. It's just in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to really dictate whether or not, consumers are finding you and the information that's getting pulled into these AI models.
Thank you. And now, what skills or certifications are most valuable for students entering an AI-focused marketing role?
Ooh, I ooh, I don't know, but I'd encourage everybody just to play with the different AI models as much as you can because I think they all have utilities in their own right. Um, I would say ChatGPT is very much trying to be the transactional large language model. They've integrated with Yelp, they've integrated with Resi. They want you to be able to book directly out of there. I think Claude is better use for maybe the business applications. I think Gemini, again, has Google behind them, and from a search from a product standpoint, they're probably the best. So I think they all have their own different utilities. So I don't know if there's like a certification to go get, but I'd get really crafty with all those different models and building stuff because they can do a lot of really unique stuff and give you a lot of good answers. So that especially if that's going to be the environment that we may be playing in for a lot of consumer search and trying to get our brands out there.
Excellent. Is there any other questions, anybody? Because that is all the questions we had prepared already. Lots of great information. As you kind of hear, we really just need to be having AI on the mind, and we need to think about how we're answering questions. So thank you so much, Kyle. What will be the one action item you're going to tell everyone they have to do? Oh,
Ooh.
actually, we have a real question that came through. I have a really hard time getting clients to see the value specifically of PR, which obviously plays a big role in geo strategy. Any tips on how to push that harder now than ever?
Ooh. Let's see. So let me clarify this, Sarah. For you're having a hard time getting clients to see the value specifically of PR, so public relations.
Yes, that's correct. Just kind of going into the third party credibility aspect of it, getting them to justify either advertising spend or, organic
Ooh,
activities, so
I
that sort of
yeah,
thing. It's a
I,
challenge.
I like this question, and it goes back into what I was talking about from the utility standpoint with these different language models. So you can start looking at your organic strategy and start looking at these different models and really starting playing with it. And it can help dictate your paid strategy as well. Because I think there's a component that we didn't cover because we covered a lot of like the organic strategy, within this. And obviously that's important. But as you start to evaluate and getting really to know your data or where your clients' brands, are at, I think it's important too to try to figure out maybe where you're strong organically and where you need to juice up paid, or you might find opportunities where you can drop paid because you've got like an incredible advantage. Maybe you don't need as much paid and you can allocate that more towards content creation and growing the organic side. So I think the more that you get to know, or the clients get to know their own data, or you start to get to know them, right? Like I think you can come with a perspective that, not only is this important from an organic standpoint, but I think as we look at paid strategy or paid ads from the different things, like you'll be able to, show a throttle between the two. And we've seen that be really important lately.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Kyle. That was super, yeah, super valuable. I learned a lot and really appreciate it. I think everyone can agree that it was a really valuable session. And we'll also make sure to send the recording out after to everyone who attended. So if you want to share, the recording with anyone else on your team just to learn more, we'll have that available as well. So we just have a few slides to wrap up before we'll get you some time back for the end of the hour. So for AMA, what's coming up next? So our fiscal year actually ends at the end of June, and we'll be starting a new fiscal year starting in July. And so we have some new board members who are coming on board. We also have a couple open board positions. So if you or anyone in the marketing world are looking to grow in your professional development, your leadership experience, we have a secretary position open on our executive board, our VP of volunteers open, as well as a couple committee positions. So these are a little bit less of a time commitment, but also valuable. So we have a social media chair and a digital marketing chair opening on our Marcom team. If anyone's interested, you can reach out to Sarah about more opportunities. The other thing that I'll mention too, oh, go ahead. Sorry. Thanks, Taylor. If you are looking for a new job or you are hiring and looking for new talent, you can also scan our QR code to go to the job board. It's a great way to see what else is out there. And then the other thing I'll mention too, just with our upcoming events, we're going to be taking a break in July on just everyone's traveling for the summer and give us at AMA a little bit of a break. And then we'll resume our programming in August. So stay tuned for some upcoming events coming this fall. And then if you are not a member and you're interested in becoming a member today, you can also reach out to us, to either me or to Sarah or someone on the AMA board. It's a great way to join our little community. We have online trainings, tools and resources, discounted certifications if you're looking to become like a professional certified marketer or a PMP. We also host networking events and have discounted programming events as well. So if you're interested in becoming a member, feel free to reach out. But thank you all so much. And thank you, Kyle, for leading today's session. And we'll end a few minutes early. So hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you all so much.